When Monsanto World came out back in 2018, one of the main things that stood out about the game was how much it put an emphasis on having each locale feel alive and breathing with life. Part of this comes from the fact that better hardware has allowed World to cram in as much detail as possible to make the game one of the most visually stunning entries to the Monsanto series. And another part of this comes from the massive overhaul of small endemic monsters that you can discover and even collect during your playthrough of World. Other than just how full to the brim this game had in terms of detail, the addition of the vast array of endemic life has added another layer to Monster Hunter when it comes to immersion, and the illusion that the locations you explore and hunt monsters is a living and dynamic world to play in. Endemic life and small monsters did appear in past games, but not as prominent and focal during the 5th generation. So much so that within just 2 games in the 5th generation, we went from finding and collecting endemic animals to straight up using endemic life as part of the hunt to any quest. In this video we will go through the history on the concept of endemic life in the Monsanto series and how it became such a prominent feature in the latest releases, and then later conclude if the concept of endemic life should be a prominent feature to the Monsanto series going forward. Please be sure to leave your comments and opinions down below, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like at the end. But with that out of the way, let's discuss the peculiar concept of endemic life in Monsanto. As mentioned earlier, animals that don't really classify as a small monster did make their appearance before the release of Monsanto World. The absolute earliest that I could think of is this little turtle that you could find near the camp area in the Mr. Peaks in Portable Third. And when you explore the dunes in 4 Ultimate, you can find a small dung beetle crawling around on the ground at night. These are just a couple of examples that I could remember, and what both of these examples have in common is the fact that they're just part of the background. All these small animals ever do is just cycle through their animation, you can't really interact with them, and they don't really interact with you back. These are all just a part of the area, and they're only there to add the sense of illusion that the locale is teeming with life. It's neat that they're added in, but other than that, they're just things that you look at in the background for when you're not really hunting anything. But everything changed when World was released, and this is really where the concept of endemic life really started. Going back to the philosophy of having a dynamic and breathing world when it comes to Monsanto World, the endemic life concept was just another layer to that idea of being in a location that feels alive, not just with the natural features that you look at when exploring each map, but also the fauna that you will encounter while doing so. World really homed in the idea that you're exploring a place that's flourishing and animated as you go further. And it also helps when things like a dynamic night and day system and no loading screens between areas are added in to this experience. But the biggest addition of this idea of a living environment is of course the overall of endemic life in every map for the game. Smaller creatures compared to the small monsters that you'd encounter like Kelby or Vespoids, these creatures can function in 3 separate ways. The first is in a non-combative role. Some of these animals will generally flee when you get too close to them, or if there is any fight nearby. The second type of endemic life are the ones that are useful for the player. Some will give you special enhancements like this lava thing that gives you a stamina boost, and there's this wedge beetle which can help the player traverse through steeper and vertical terrain more quickly than just climbing. And there's small animals like the infamous Paratoad, who can contribute to a hunt by inflicting status ailments to a monster in the middle of a fight. However, with the different types of endemic life that you'd encounter in the game, World has added in an entirely new system in the game which allows you to catch and collect almost all of these creatures, except for the wedge beetle. That thing is indestructible. Along with the fishing rod, which was present in past games, the capture net is a piece of gear that you can attach to your slinger to catch any terrestrial or airborne creatures. If you manage to catch an endemic life, not only will you be rewarded with points, but you will also be notified with how big or small your catch was, with the larger catches fetching you more points and a record to your notebook. And speaking of your notebook, just like with the regular monsters that you'd fight, each endemic life has their own unique description and researcher's notes. Looking back at it now, I am genuinely shocked at how comprehensive this system is. In a game like World that's added in so many new mechanics and gimmicks, a feature like the endemic life shouldn't really be this thorough in a Monster Hunter game, but yet here we are, a surprisingly in-depth system that no one has asked for or wanted, but the majority of people who played this game didn't really complain too much. Myself included thought that this was a pretty neat and novel concept for the series. Small monsters that are actually useful for you in a hunt, and you can catch these. It's a very sweet and harmless addition to the game. However, to add more to an already loaded feature that isn't even the main focus to Monster Hunter World, any small creatures that you've caught in your playthrough can be placed to any of the houses that you have like a pet. They're even grouped in different categories when it comes to being placed in parts of your house. I don't understand. This system has no right to be this comprehensive, but all these options are available to you for no reason at all. Now let's move on to Monsanto Rise, and let's just say things just get crazier from here. Take all the practical endemic life that you'd have in Monsanto World, crank their usefulness all the way to 11, then add a shit more of them in the map. Seriously, the main gimmick of Monsanto Rise is the use of a small creature, the Y-Bug. You gain new abilities and moves with said endemic life. You can traverse, evade, and transport yourself with said endemic life, control monsters to bang themselves to a wall or fight other monsters with said endemic life. My god, there's even an endemic life that can power up your endemic life. Additionally, if you travel to a particular map long enough, you can power up your hunter all the way up by collecting birds and interact with bugs that have special power dust in them. I'm genuinely sorry, but somehow we went from Pokemon Light in World to becoming near invincible in every quest just as long as you interact with enough animals along the way before you even start the hunt. What Monster Hunter Rise and Sunbreck has done with regards to this system is that small animals that don't do anything in a hunt is a big no-no, and that each and every creature that you'd encounter should benefit you in some form or another. Now don't get me wrong, this idea isn't necessarily bad. I would be a hypocrite if I say I don't like this change because it's one of the main reasons why I enjoy the wirebug mechanic. But when it comes to a point when you are near unkillable with all the free bonuses and power-ups from the creatures that you find, you're at that stage where you remember that small little turtle in portable fur to where you are now, dominating a monster just because you spent 5 minutes buffing yourself to oblivion. At that point, all you can think of is just, what a fucking evolution. Here's a quick example. This is a fight with a silver Rathalos in Sunbreck's new update. Immediately my health and stamina are at full capacity because of that prison bird. And over here, we are now immune from getting one-shotted because I found myself an Aurora turtle. And now we're in the fight. I've already got an extra wire bug to use, and look, starburst bugs in 2 places for me to use for the fight. Just right next to one is a marionette spider for me to wallbang. There we go. And finally there's a sleep toad for me to use afterwards. I'm sorry, but has there ever been a situation in an endgame fight where you have this much leeway to getting a head start to a hunt? I mean, I've already made a decent amount of progress to the hunt in less than 3 minutes with just the use of the small creatures that are provided to me. In general, the inclusion of endemic life in the Monster Hunter series has been one of the most well thought out and carefully made features to be added. In my opinion, this is such a smart way to build up a sense of living ecology within the world of Monster Hunter, and the level of immersion this feature brings is definitely a brilliant factor. And the fact that it isn't necessarily a main mechanic towards the overall gameplay to the games, but as more of an optional thing, really shows the level of depth and detail that World has provided is something that really should be appreciated more. The whole collection gimmick was a nice touch to at least make every small creature that you find have some sort of purpose, whether it'll be for any collectionist purposes, because I know some people enjoy these sorts of things in their games, or just to make your room more lively. And even in its return in Monster Hunter Rise, despite it being way too overpowered and ridiculous at times, the utility that you get from each little creature that you can interact and collect, in my opinion at least, does make most hunts more fun and enjoyable. Despite the obvious power creep between a hunter and a monster from all the power-ups and bonuses that you get from these small creatures, it is generally fun to play Rise because of them. If and when this feature does make its return to a future Monster Hunter game, I'm entirely all for it to coming back. Personally, I do like World's approach to the concept of endemic life more than Rise, simply for how much more you can do with them, like catching them, recording each capture and placing them around your house. And the way World allows you to use the more practical endemic life feels more natural and less conspicuous than Rise. If it were me, I would like to see somewhat of a middle ground to how the 2 games approach this feature in the next game. Have the cosmetic and more natural approach that World has, like the little recording system that you'd have, mixed in with the fun and enjoyment that you'd get using said endemic life in Rise, but with the bonuses that you'd get turned down just a little bit. And I do wish the option of catching these things, then having them as pets to your house could return again, because it's just one of those little details that I really enjoyed when playing World. And that has been it for this video. Do make sure to check me out on Twitter at HDRooland. And do have a look at my second channel, Chef Roly, as from now on that'll be my main channel for Let's Plays. As always, thank you for watching, and I shall see you later.